Attacker revealed. Nick Aldis shows the footage. Jacob Fatu's real attacker exposed. Are you kidding me right now? WWE just pulled off one of the most disgusting cover UPS in recent memory, and they thought we wouldn't notice. They thought they could sweep this under the rug, edit the footage, control the narrative, and we'd all just sit here like mindless sheep accepting whatever story they fed us about Jacob Fatu's attack. Well, guess what? Nick Aldis just exposed everything. The real footage has surfaced, and what I'm about to show you is going to make your blood boil because the person who attacked Jacob Fatu is someone WWE has been protecting this entire time. I'm about to break down frame-by-frame evidence that mainstream wrestling media is too scared to talk about because it implicates some of WWE's biggest names in a conspiracy that goes deeper than anyone imagined. And before you click away thinking this is just another wrestling conspiracy theory, understand this: Nick Aldis, the SmackDown general manager, literally held a press conference with footage that WWE tried to suppress, and what's on that tape changes everything we thought we knew about the bloodline, about loyalty, and about who's really pulling the strings on Friday nights. Let's rewind to last Friday's SmackDown because that's where this entire situation started spiraling out of control. Jacob Fatu, the Samoan werewolf, one of the most dominant and feared competitors to ever step foot in a WWE ring, was found laid out backstage. Not just knocked down, destroyed. Medical staff rushed to the scene. Trainers were frantically checking for injuries. Security was scrambling to figure out what happened. And the announcers on commentary were selling this as some mysterious attack that came out of nowhere. But here's what they didn't tell you during that broadcast. Here's what WWE conveniently left out of their narrative. The attack didn't happen in some dark, secluded hallway where there are no cameras. No, it happened right outside the gorilla position, one of the most monitored areas in the entire arena. There are cameras everywhere back there. Security footage, production cameras, handheld devices. The idea that WWE didn't see who did it is absolutely ridiculous, and every single person watching knew it was a lie the moment they said it. Jacob Fatu was taken out of the arena on a stretcher. They loaded him into an ambulance. The show continued without any real explanation. Solo Sikoa came out looking furious but suspiciously not surprised. Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa seemed more focused on their own agenda than finding out who attacked their supposed brother. And WWE's official statement? The investigation is ongoing. Translation: we know exactly what happened, but we're not ready to tell you yet because we need to figure out how to spin this to maximize drama and ratings. Fast forward to this week, and social media has been exploding with speculation. Everyone's got a theory. Some people think it was Roman Reigns sending a message to the new bloodline. Others think it was Cody Rhodes getting revenge for months of attacks. There were even theories about Kevin Owens or Randy Orton being involved. The wrestling community has been absolutely obsessed with figuring out who took down the seemingly indestructible Jacob Fatu. And then yesterday, Nick Aldis drops an absolute bombshell. The SmackDown general manager, who's been dealing with chaos and disorder on his show for months, apparently decided he'd had enough of the lies and the cover UPS. According to multiple sources who were backstage, Aldis went directly to Triple H and demanded access to all the security footage from that night. Not just the edited clips WWE was planning to air. Not the sanitized version. Everything. Now here's where it gets interesting, and this is where you need to pay close attention because the politics behind this are absolutely fascinating. Nick Aldis, as a character, has been positioned as someone who wants order and control on SmackDown. But behind the scenes, the real Nick Aldis reportedly has significant creative input and a direct line to Triple H. He's not just a puppet reading lines, he's actually involved in decision-making. So when he demanded to see the footage, it wasn't just a storyline beat. It was a real backstage power move that forced WWE's hand. Triple H apparently met with Aldis for over an hour discussing how to handle the situation. According to sources close to the meeting, there was genuine concern about revealing the attacker's identity because of the storyline implications. WWE has been carefully building multiple narratives on SmackDown, and exposing the truth about Jacob Fatu's attack could potentially derail several ongoing storylines. But Aldis allegedly argued that keeping it secret was making SmackDown look incompetent and was hurting the credibility of everyone involved. The compromise? Aldis would be given access to the footage and allowed to reveal the attacker, but it had to be done in a way that maximized the dramatic impact and set up future storylines. Essentially, Triple H agreed to expose the truth, but only if it served the larger narrative. That's vintage WWE. Even when they're being honest, they're still working the audience. Question for the comments right now: before I reveal who it was, who do you think attacked Jacob Fatu? Drop your guess below and let's see if you were right. So Nick Aldis calls an emergency SmackDown meeting. He gathers security personnel, backstage officials, and key members of the roster. The tension is reportedly thick because everyone knows that once this information comes out, there's no putting the toothpaste back in the tube. Aldis has a laptop connected to a large monitor, and on that laptop is the raw, unedited security footage from the night of the attack. Before he plays the footage, Aldis makes a statement that's been circulating online. He says something along the lines of, "4 weeks, we've allowed speculation and rumors to dominate the conversation about what happened to Jacob Fatu. As general manager of SmackDown, I have a responsibility to uncover the truth, regardless of who it implicates or what consequences it brings." What you're about to see is unfiltered, unedited footage from multiple camera angles showing exactly what happened. And I want to make it clear, this revelation is going to change everything. The footage starts playing, and here's what it shows, frame by frame. Jacob Fatu is walking through the backstage area, heading toward the gorilla position. He's in his ring gear, clearly preparing for a match or segment later in the show. He's on his phone, not paying attention to his surroundings. First mistake. The timestamp shows this is happening during a commercial break, which explains why it wasn't caught live. As Jacob walks past the production area, you can see someone in the background. The figure is deliberately staying out of Jacob's peripheral vision, moving when he moves, stopping when he stops. This isn't a random encounter, this is stalking. This is premeditated. Whoever this is has been waiting for the perfect moment to strike, and they're being incredibly calculated about it. Jacob turns a corner, and this is where it happens. The attacker moves fast, we're talking explosive, athletic movement. They come from behind with what appears to be a steel chair, but here's the crucial detail that the enhanced footage reveals: they're wearing a black hoodie with the hood pulled up, black gloves, and they've deliberately obscured their face. This isn't some spontaneous attack born from anger. This is planned. This is methodical. This is someone who knew exactly what they were doing and took steps to hide their identity. The first chair shot connects with the back of Jacob's head. He drops immediately. We're talking about a man who's survived wars in the ring, who's built a reputation on being nearly indestructible, and one shot puts him down. That tells you about the force behind the chair shot and potentially about Jacob not seeing it coming and being unable to brace for impact. But the attacker doesn't stop there. And this is where it gets brutal. They hit Jacob 3 more times. Crack, crack, crack. Each shot precisely targeted the back, the ribs, the legs. This isn't just an attack. This is an assault designed to injure, to take Jacob out of action for an extended period. This is someone who wanted to make sure Jacob Fatu would be off television for weeks, maybe months. After the 4th chair shot, the attacker drops the chair and quickly walks away, head down, staying out of direct camera view. They know where the cameras are. They know the blind spots. They navigate through the backstage area like someone who's intimately familiar with WWE's setup. This isn't a fan who snuck in. This isn't an outside attacker. This is someone who works there. Someone who knows the ins and outs of WWE's production area. Someone who's been there long enough to know exactly where to strike and how to avoid being immediately identified. Medical personnel rush to Jacob's aid within seconds. Security comes running from multiple directions. And here's the interesting part: some of the security guards run in the opposite direction from where the attacker went, almost like they were misdirected or given false information about which way to pursue. That detail is crucial and we'll come back to it. Now, Nick Aldis doesn't just show one angle. He's got multiple cameras showing this attack from different perspectives. There's the main security camera I just described. There's a handheld camera from a crew member who was nearby and caught the aftermath. There's even footage from what appears to be someone's cell phone, possibly another wrestler or backstage worker who heard the commotion and started recording. But the smoking gun? The footage that reveals everything? It comes from a camera angle that WWE didn't even know existed. Apparently, there's a GoPro-style camera that production uses for documentary-style backstage footage that was mounted on an equipment cart nearby. And that camera, because of its wide-angle lens and position, caught something that all the other cameras missed: a clear shot of the attacker's face when they turned their head for just a split second. Nick Aldis freezes the frame. He zooms in. He enhances the image. And there it is, clear as day. The person who attacked Jacob Fatu, the person who's been hiding in plain sight this entire time, the person WWE has been protecting with their ongoing investigation. Nonsense, it's Jimmy USO. Let that sink in for a moment. Jimmy USO, GUSO's twin brother, former undisputed WWE Tag Team Champion, member of the Bloodline. The same Jimmy USO who's been absent from television for weeks with what WWE called personal issues. The same Jimmy USO who supposedly walked away from the Bloodline after Roman Reigns lost the title. The same Jimmy USO who everyone assumed was just taking time off to heal up and would eventually return for a feel-good reunion storyline. But this changes everything. This reveals that Jimmy USO has been playing a long game. That his absence wasn't about personal issues, it was about strategy. It was about making everyone forget about him, making everyone focus on other threats, making everyone believe he was out of the picture. And then, when the moment was right, when Jacob Fatu was vulnerable, when the new Bloodline thought they were untouchable, Jimmy struck. The question is why? Why would Jimmy USO attack Jacob Fatu? What's his motivation? What's his endgame? And this is where the story gets even more complicated and fascinating because there are multiple layers to unpack here. Drop a comment, are you shocked that it was Jimmy USO, or did you suspect him all along? Let me know. Let's start with the most obvious theory, revenge. Jacob Fatu is part of Solo Siko's version of the Bloodline, the group that essentially usurped power from Roman Reigns. When Solo declared himself the tribal chief and brought in Jacob Fatu, Tama Tonga, and Tonga Loa, he was making a statement that the old bloodline was dead and a new era had begun. That's a direct slap in the face to everything Jimmy and G built with Roman over the past few years. Jimmy USO has spent years fighting alongside Roman Reigns. He defended Roman through the ups and downs. He stood by his cousin even when it meant turning his back on the WWE universe. He sacrificed his relationship with his brother G for extended periods. He did everything Roman asked of him. And then, when Roman loses the title and goes on hiatus, Solo Siko just swoops in and replaces everyone? That's not just disrespectful, that's grounds for war. But here's where it gets more interesting. If Jimmy's motivation was pure revenge against the new bloodline, why didn't he attack Solo Siko directly? Why go after Jacob Fatu specifically? That's the question that makes this whole situation more complex than a simple revenge story. Because Jacob Fatu, while dominant, isn't the leader. He's not making the decisions. He's the muscle, the enforcer, the weapon that Solo uses to intimidate and destroy opponents. Unless Jimmy knows something we don't. Unless Jimmy understands that Jacob Fatu is more important to the new bloodline than anyone realizes. Think about it, Solo Siko has been tribal chief for months now, but how much of his success has been because of Jacob Fatu doing the heavy lifting? How many matches has Jacob won for the group? How many times has Jacob been the difference maker in keeping the new bloodline relevant and dominant? If Jimmy wanted to destroy the new bloodline from the inside out, attacking Jacob Fatu is actually a genius move. You don't cut off the head immediately, you remove the heart first. You take away their most dangerous weapon. You force Solo to operate without his ace in the hole. And suddenly, the new bloodline looks vulnerable. Suddenly, they're not this unstoppable force. Suddenly, they're just three guys who are really missing their most intimidating member. But there's another theory that's been floating around backstage, and this one is wild. What if Jimmy USO didn't act alone? What if this attack was coordinated with someone else? The footage shows Jimmy as the attacker, yes, but there are suspicious elements about how he knew Jacob would be alone, how he knew the exact timing, how security seemed to be in the wrong places at the wrong times. Some people backstage are whispering that this was actually orchestrated by Roman Reigns from behind the scenes. That Roman, even though he's been absent from television, has been pulling strings and manipulating situations. That he sent Jimmy to take out Jacob Fatu as part of a larger plan to destabilize Solo's bloodline before making his grand return to reclaim his position as tribal chief. Think about the chess game Roman could be playing here. He loses the title to Cody Rhodes. He takes time off, letting everyone think he's broken and defeated. Meanwhile, Solo Siko forms a new bloodline, thinking he's seized power in a vacuum. But what Solo doesn't realize is that Roman never relinquishes power. He's always 10 steps ahead. So Roman sends Jimmy, his most loyal soldier, to start breaking down the new bloodline piece by piece. By the time Roman returns, Solo's group is weak, fractured, and ready to fall at the feet of the true tribal chief. It's diabolical. It's manipulative. It's exactly the kind of thing Roman Reigns would do. And if that's the real story here, then Jimmy USO isn't just a vengeful former member attacking out of emotion, he's a soldier following orders from his general. That adds an entirely different dimension to this storyline. Now let's talk about what Nick Aldis did after revealing the footage, because this is where the political and creative genius really shows. Aldis didn't just show the video and walk away. No, he immediately issued a statement saying that Jimmy USO is now banned from all WWE programming until further notice. He's suspended indefinitely without pay. He's not allowed in any WWE arena, at any WWE event, at any WWE facility. Aldis threw the book at him. But here's the thing, and this is where it gets meta, everybody watching knows that WWE wants Jimmy USO on television. They want this story to play out. They want the confrontation between Jimmy and Solo. They want the eventual reunion or showdown with G. So by banning Jimmy, Aldis has actually created more intrigue. Because now Jimmy has to find ways to appear despite the ban. He has to sneak in. He has to disguise himself. He has to be creative. And that's infinitely more interesting than just having him show up next week for a standard confrontation. This is brilliant storytelling because it adds stakes. Jimmy can't just call out Solo Siko for a match. He can't just walk down the ramp whenever he wants. He has to operate in the shadows, plan his moves carefully, and every appearance he makes has consequence. If he gets caught, presumably the suspension gets longer or the punishment gets worse. It's like WWE just turned Jimmy USO into a rogue operative, and that's fascinating television. The other thing Aldis did that's really smart, he put the new bloodline on notice. He called Solo Sikoa, Tama Tonga, and Tonga Loa into his office and essentially said, Jacob Fatu was attacked under my watch, on my show. That makes me look bad. So here's the deal, you want revenge on Jimmy USO? You're going to have to do it within the rules and within the structure I create. No vigilante justice. No attacking random people thinking they might be Jimmy. You play by my rules, or you're all suspended too. That puts Solo in an interesting position because the bloodline has never operated within the rules. They've always done whatever they want, whenever they want. But now they're being told they have to show restraint? They have to wait for official sanctions? That's like putting a muzzle on a pack of wolves. It creates internal conflict within the group, and it sets up inevitable moments where they're going to break Aldis's rules and face consequences. What was your immediate reaction when you saw it was Jimmy USO? Were you excited, angry, confused? Tell me in the comments. Let's talk about the implications for GUSO because this is potentially the most emotionally compelling part of the entire story. G and Jimmy are twins. They've been together their entire lives. They've been one of the greatest tag teams in WWE history. And even though they've had their conflicts and their separations over the past few years, there's always been an underlying bond, an understanding that at the end of the day, they're brothers. But now G has to grapple with the fact that his twin brother just committed a brutal assault that's going to have massive repercussions across SmackDown. And here's the complicating factor, G has been building his own identity separate from the bloodline. He's been his own man. He's been main event GUSO, getting huge reactions from the crowd, having fantastic matches, establishing himself as a legitimate single star who doesn't need Roman or Jimmy or anyone else. So when Jimmy eventually reaches out to G, and you know he will, what does G do? Does he support his brother unconditionally because that's what family does? Does he condemn the attack because it goes against who G has become as a person? Does he try to stay neutral and avoid the situation entirely? Every option is fraught with emotional complexity and leads to compelling television. Imagine the promo where Jimmy finally appears on SmackDown despite the ban, and he's looking for G. He finds his brother backstage and says something like, I did what I had to do. For US. For our legacy. For our family. Solo and his crew tried to erase everything we built, and I couldn't let that happen. But I need to know, are you with me or against me? And G has to make a choice right there. Does he embrace his brother and get dragged back into bloodline politics that he's been trying to escape? Or does he reject Jimmy and potentially destroy their relationship forever? That's drama. That's the kind of storytelling that makes people emotionally invested in wrestling beyond just the matches. There's also the Solo Sikoa perspective to consider. When Solo finds out definitively that it was Jimmy USO who attacked Jacob Fatu, his response is going to be volcanic. Because this isn't just an attack on a member of his group, this is a direct challenge to his authority as the self-proclaimed tribal chief. This is Jimmy USO essentially saying, you're not a real chief. You're not a real leader. And I'm going to dismantle everything you've built to prove it. Solo can't let that slide. He can't. If he does, he looks weak. He looks like a tribal chief who can't protect his own people. So Solo has to retaliate, but he has to do it smart because of Aldis's restrictions. This sets up what could be months of back-and-forth attacks, mind games, and escalating violence between Jimmy and Solo's faction. And here's where WWE could really get creative with it. What if Solo decides the way to hurt Jimmy isn't by going after Jimmy directly, but by targeting JUI? What if Solo starts attacking G to draw Jimmy out of hiding? That would force G into the conflict whether he wants to be involved or not, and it would make Jimmy have to question whether his revenge plot was worth putting his brother in danger. The other massive question is, where is Roman Reigns in all of this? If the theory about Roman orchestrating the attack is true, then he's watching all of this unfold from somewhere, probably with that subtle smirk he does so well. He's watching Solo scramble. He's watching Jimmy execute the plan. He's watching the new bloodline start to crumble. And he's waiting for the perfect moment to return and remind everyone who the real tribal chief is. But if Roman wasn't involved, if Jimmy acted completely on his own, then Roman's eventual return gets even more interesting. Because now he comes back to find that Jimmy has started a war, the bloodline is fractured, Solo is claiming to be tribal chief, Jacob Fatu is injured, and the entire family is in chaos. Does Roman side with Jimmy, his loyal soldier? Does he condemn the attack and try to broker peace? Does he use the chaos to his advantage and manipulate everyone into doing what he wants? All of these possibilities are gold for storytelling. Let's also address the Jacob Fatu injury situation because this has real implications beyond just the storyline. According to the KFAB reports, Jacob is out with significant injuries from the attack, possible concussion, bruised ribs, leg contusion. In reality, these types of storyline injuries usually mean one of two things: either the wrestler is actually hurt and they're writing them off TV to recover, or they're being temporarily removed from TV to build anticipation for their return and make the eventual comeback feel more significant. If Jacob is legitimately injured, then Jimmy's attack serves a dual purpose: it advances the storyline and it explains Jacob's absence. That's efficient booking. But if Jacob isn't really hurt and this is purely a storyline injury, then we should expect him to return at the most dramatic moment possible. Imagine Solo finally gets his hands on Jimmy, he's about to deliver some devastating finishing move, and suddenly Jacob Fatu's music hits. The place would go absolutely insane, and Jacob's return would have so much more impact because we've been waiting for it and wondering when he'd be cleared to compete again. The other element we need to discuss is the wider SmackDown locker room's reaction to all of this. Because here's the thing, Jimmy USO committing this attack doesn't just affect the Bloodline storylines, it affects everyone. If someone can sneak in and brutally assault Jacob Fatu, one of the most dangerous competitors on the roster, then nobody is safe. That creates paranoia. That creates an environment where wrestlers start looking over their shoulders, where people start forming alliances for protection, where the entire backstage dynamic shifts. Nick Aldis could use this as a springboard to announce new security measures, which could then lead to storylines about certain wrestlers feeling restricted or monitored too closely. Or maybe Aldis brings in additional security personnel who turn out to be aligned with one faction or another, leading to corruption storylines. The possibilities for where this goes are virtually endless. And let's talk about the footage itself as a plot device, because Nick Aldis having this evidence gives him tremendous power. He can choose when to reveal more details. He can use it as leverage against the Bloodline. He can threaten to release additional footage that might implicate other people in knowing about the attack or covering it up. The footage becomes a MacGuffin, a thing that everyone wants to control or destroy because of what it represents. What if someone tries to steal the footage from Aldis's office? What if there's a whole heist storyline where members of the Bloodline try to break into Aldis's computer to delete the evidence? That's a different kind of wrestling story that we don't see very often, and it could be really entertaining if done right. Imagine Tama Tonga trying to figure out computer passwords or Tongaloa trying to intimidate IT staff into wiping servers. It's absurd in the best possible way. There's also the question of whether other wrestlers knew about Jimmy's plan. Was Paul Heyman involved? Heyman has a history with the Bloodline and with Roman specifically. He's the wise counsel, the special counsel, the guy who always knows more than he's letting on. Did Jimmy consult with Heyman before executing this attack? Is Heyman playing both sides, feeding information to Solo while secretly still being loyal to Roman and Jimmy? If Heyman is involved, that opens up an entirely different can of worms. Because Heyman on a microphone explaining and justifying Jimmy's actions would be must-see television. Heyman spinning this as a necessary evil, as a tactical move in a larger war, as something that had to happen to restore the natural order of the Bloodline, that's the kind of promo that gets people talking and trending worldwide. Here's another angle that WWE could explore. What if there's additional footage that Nick Aldis hasn't revealed yet? What if the attack on Jacob Fatu is just the tip of the iceberg? What if Jimmy has been responsible for other mysterious incidents over the past few weeks and we just didn't know it? That would recontextualize a bunch of previous shows and make people want to go back and rewatch with this new information in mind. For example, were there any unexplained equipment malfunctions during new Bloodline segments? Were there times when Solo's group seemed to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, missing opportunities? Could those have been Jimmy sabotaging things from behind the scenes? That kind of recon storytelling can be really effective when done well because it makes the audience feel like they were watching a mystery unfold without even realizing it. The beauty of this storyline is that it works on multiple levels. On the surface level, it's a straightforward revenge story. Jimmy is angry about being replaced and attacks the new Bloodline. On a deeper level, it's about family, loyalty, legacy, and what happens when those things come into conflict with each other. On an even deeper level, it's about power structures, about who gets to claim leadership, about whether blood and history matter more than current dominance and strength. And that's what makes great wrestling storytelling, when you can watch it as a casual fan and enjoy the action and drama. But if you want to dig deeper and analyze the themes and implications, there are layers to unpack and discuss. This Jimmy USO revelation gives WWE so much meat to work with for the next 6 months or more of SmackDown programming. Let's talk about potential match outcomes and feuds that could spin out of this. Obviously, the big money match is Jimmy USO vs Solo Sikoa, probably at a major premium live event with some sort of stipulation attached. Maybe it's a street fight where everything is legal. Maybe it's an I Quit match where someone has to verbally submit. Maybe it's a match where if Jimmy loses, he has to acknowledge Solo as tribal chief forever. But if Jimmy wins, Solo has to leave the Bloodline and give up any claim to the tribal chief position. But before we get to that big showdown, there should be a series of smaller encounters and proxy battles. Maybe Jimmy costs Solo a match or title opportunity. Maybe Solo prevents Jimmy from entering the building, leading to Jimmy finding creative ways to interfere anyway. Build the tension. Make the audience desperate to see them finally lock up in the ring. That's how you create a truly memorable feud. There's also the potential for Jimmy vs Jacob Fatu when Jacob returns from his injury. That match would be about Jacob getting revenge for the attack, proving he's not intimidated, showing that he's still the Samoan werewolf regardless of what Jimmy did. And that match should be brutal. Like, legit one of the hardest hitting matches of the year. Because both guys are going to want to prove something, Jacob that he's still unstoppable, and Jimmy that he can hang with anyone even after time away. Then you've got the inevitable Jimmy vs. G match if they end up on opposite sides of this conflict. That match would be heartbreaking because it's twin brothers who should be tag team partners fighting each other instead. The emotion in that match would be off the charts, and the crowd would be totally invested in wanting them to reconcile rather than destroy each other. That's the match where maybe Roman Reigns needs to be at ringside or involved somehow to add even more layers to it. And don't forget about potential tag matches. What if at some point Jimmy recruits someone to be his partner against Solo and one of his guys? Who would Jimmy trust enough to team with? That's a great question and could lead to some surprising alliances. Maybe Jimmy teams with someone from Raw who's had issues with the bloodline. Maybe he teams with a returned Sami Zayn if Zayn gets moved to SmackDown. Maybe he teams with Kevin Owens. The possibilities create interesting what-if scenarios. There's also the championship implications to consider. If Jimmy is going to war with the new bloodline, does that mean he's also coming after whatever titles they might hold? Is Jimmy's ultimate goal to not just destroy Solo's faction but to also capture gold and prove he's still at the top of the card? That adds another layer of motivation beyond just revenge. It makes Jimmy a more complete character with multiple objectives rather than being one